This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome everyone to the DLE Leadership Experience Second Virtual Ownership Workshop. Please note that this program is being recorded and will be available for subsequent viewing on the DLE website. My name is Marcus Coleman. I'm a member of the DLE Advisory Board and a four-time alum of the DLE Gen Now Retreat. I'm relatively new to the Berkshires, where I'm now based. I moved here in February, just before the COVID-19 crisis hit, to begin a new career as a registered client service associate at Raymond James in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. I'll be the moderator for today's workshop. In that role, I'd like to remind everyone to adjust your settings to have your microphone and camera switched off. To maximize everyone's learning experience, we have some core DLE ground rules. Please use the chat box for comments and questions that are topic related. My team member Kaylee will be monitoring the chat conversation and flagging questions and comments that we will field to Justin during the Q&A session. We have a 15 minutes dedicated for a Q&A exchange after Justin takes us through his slides. We definitely want to hear from you. Do your best to minimize distractions and stay focused. Resist the temptation to multitask by taking notes. That's a technique for keeping you present in the moment. Those notes also will help you work your follow-up to Justin's recommended action. Career literacy has long been a hot topic among the DLE community members. Of the 63 respondents to a recent DLE 10-second quick poll, 44% indicated that they were not satisfied with their current career path. And since the COVID-19 crisis, carving a career path amidst so much change and uncertainty has become a heightened challenge. To help us navigate with a formula for career success and other tips is our guest speaker, Justin McKennon. Justin, we're excited to hear from you. Now and over to you.
Can you guys hear me now okay?
Perfect.
Excellent. Okay, so sorry about the technical delay there, folks. My name is Justin McKennon. Some of you guys may know me, but many of you guys probably do not. So I'll try to give you guys a little bit of reason why you should care what I have to say today. And hopefully you guys will take a bit away from this and learn what it is that kind of makes me tick and why I believe that career literacy is one of the more important topics that you'll run into in your career. Education-wise, I've got a bachelor's and a master's degree, both of which are in electrical engineering. I've been very involved in the space sector for quite a long time now. During my college career, I received 6 separate NASA Space Grant Consortium research awards. That was what allowed me to get really interested into the space sector and study particle physics and black holes, all of the nerd stuff that kind of helps me tick today. I began my professional career at General Dynamics. I made it to be a senior engineer there before I left. I joined Lightning Technologies and I stayed there for a number of years. I left there when I was the chief engineer before I joined Electromagnetic Applications, which is my current company. Outside of work, I really enjoy playing golf, doing CrossFit. Anybody that knows me outside of work there probably would agree that that's about all I talk about. If you're from the Berkshires, you've probably seen a lot about what my company is currently doing in the news, the process of building a space radiation effects test facility. The image that you see on the side of the picture here is from the day that my company announced we were coming to Pittsfield. I think there was a pretty girl or something off in the corner there. It was probably my wife. That's where that smile came from there. And of course, most importantly, I'm a proud dad and husband. I have a young son, and my wife and I and he also all live out here in Pittsfield. And it's home. So now a little bit of the meat of what we're here to talk about today in terms of career literacy. COVID-19 has changed just about everything that we think we know about the world. And it's a real big difference from being in front of people, from shaking hands and being part of meetings and things like that. And having the right approach to career literacy is, I think, more important than it's ever become. If you're not able to get the face time that you normally would get with people, how do you grow your career? How do you get people to care about you as both an employee and as a person and as someone that wants to advance their career? And this is important because we're in a situation now where there's a lot of companies that are undergoing drastic change, and we need to be aware that your job isn't as secure as it always has been. And so in order to keep yourself in a position where you get to enjoy the things that you want to do, get a paycheck, and support yourself, you need to be important. And it's difficult to do when you're not in front of people. And so the question that I pose is, how do you continue to grow your career when you can't be in front of the people that make the career decisions? You're not always going to be in the room. You need to have a permanence that's there when you're not around. And that requires you to become career literate in order to understand who you are, what makes you tick, and where you should be going. And the combination of all of those there, I think, is a very important topic, and one that I'm very passionate about. To become career literate, I kind of refer to this as the formula. Now, to me, a career, I guess, is the accumulation of knowledge and growth that you experience as you face all the new and different challenges that you run into throughout your life. But the key to that is that it's different for everybody. Everybody's definition of true success is actually going to very likely not overlap at all with between different people there. Now, the greater the role, the longer the process of becoming career literate takes. And so it's important to have a good plan for it there. And I always, I harp on this whenever this topic comes up, is that you need to be honest about who you are when you're doing this sort of thing. Now, the picture in the image here kind of has a closed loop, so you can't really get out of it. And that's intended to show you that this is always something that's going to be ongoing. And it's something that I try to take seriously and always keep in the peripheral for me in order to make sure I know where I'm going and I'm doing what I should be doing career-wise. The first part of it is, who are you right now? And that requires you to look in the mirror, splash cold water on your face, and make sure that you're honest about what you're good at and what you're not. And I'll talk a little bit about what that means to be truly honest with yourself in that, and do so in an effective way so that you can use that as a springboard to put yourself in a successful position. And so if you know what your pros and cons are, you have to look at what's your definition of success. That doesn't mean money. It's actually a very complicated topic, and I'll try to be brief with it today. But success is really what gets you going in the morning. To some of us, that's the ability to buy fancy cars and have a big house. To some of us, it's to be able to spend time with our kids in the evenings and not have to work 100 hours. To some of us, it's to be able to travel the world. It's very different for everybody, and the distinction between those definitions is very important. Once you have a definition of success and you also know who you are, then you can figure out where you need to be. You need to have a role that suits what you consider to be successful. And so, of course, combining all of that, you can then develop a plan to it and then find some friends along the way who make it much, much easier for you to traverse such a long road there. And then you execute. And that goes round and round and round and round. And that's kind of what we would call the formula in this case. So I always like this funny picture here. It says, dreams don't work unless you do. I'm sure one of you guys has seen that in a classroom or something at an elementary school here. But I've been able to kind of define success, at least in the way I view it, as really four main topics here: money, time, experience, or challenge. Now, for me, right now where I am in my life, for me to be successful, I need to have control of my time. And what does that mean? So I'll start with how it was for me when I first got out of college. I had student loan debt. I left college. I was a pretty normal guy. I guess I am still a normal guy, but even more so then. But I wanted money. I wanted to put commas in my bank account. I wanted to be able to go out to eat whenever I wanted to, and buy a house at some point, and do all that sort of stuff. And so that's what I chased very early on. And if I wasn't making money, I wasn't successful. As I grew in my career, money became a little bit less important. I was able to buy a house, and I'm in my early and mid 20s here. It's just my wife, my fiance at the time. We're just kind of going day to day, hanging out, and now I wanted experience. And so I decided that at the time, General Dynamics wasn't going to afford me that opportunity, and so I left, and that was where my career had to go. And at Lightning Technologies, I was traveling the vast majority of the year for a number of years there, and then, of course, my wife and I had a child, and of course, being home becomes substantially more important now, and so that's why time is for me. And some people, and challenge is the last part, is, do I want to really, really do something difficult? Do I want to make an indelible mark on an industry? And that's also something that can make you tick. So when I say, who are you right now? It's the top of the formula, the top of the food chain there. And to me, this is the foundation for the entire process here. And it's not something that many of us are comfortable doing. I'm not talking about when I say who are you, the answer that you give to someone interviewing you for a job. It's not a so tell me your pros and cons. This is the cold hard look in the mirror and really knowing who it is that's staring at you back. You can't be career literate without a foundation like this, because how do you know what you're good at? If you want to define a role that fits the skills that you are really good at, you have to know what you're good at and what you're not. And many of us here, I'm guilty of it myself, and in many cases, we think we're a lot better at things than we are. And until you come to terms with areas that you need to improve on, and you don't necessarily need to avoid them, but there are certain cases where it's more beneficial to emphasize what you're good at rather than fight through what you're not, it becomes a different story. So there's a guy, his name is Richard St. John. He's the guy pictured in the center of this image here. He is a fantastic, fantastic author and champion of success. And he believes that there are really 8 traits of success. And I think I subscribe to that fairly consistently there. He wrote a book called 8 to Be Great, and he spent about, I think it was 7 years or something like that, of taking about 500 different interviews with all the folks that you and I probably admire, the Bill Gates of the world, CEOs of large companies, things like that, and ironed out the traits that you have to be successful. And the funny part about this is that from all the different industries that he interviewed these people from, these traits overlapped. And so in order for you to own your career, you need to have an honest assessment of what makes you successful or what will make you successful. If you're a terrible artist and you take a job being an artist, it's probably not a good idea. And it sounds funny in that context, but that's what a lot of us end up doing. And then we're left wondering in the middle of our careers or the end of our careers or the beginning, am I where I should be? And why am I feeling unfulfilled? And so once you take a look in the mirror there, it's a great first step at really controlling your career and putting you in a position to succeed. And so these 8 traits here are listed here on the left side. I'll walk you through briefly what these traits mean and kind of why they're included on here. And so the first part is passion. Carol Coletta said that she's driven by her passion, and that's what makes her successful. It gets her up every day. She's a very famous radio producer. Rupert Murdoch, CEO, founder of News Corp, always said, it's all hard work and nothing comes easily, but I have a lot of fun. Alec Garden of Relic Entertainment said, put your nose down and make yourself damn good at something. Relic Entertainment makes a ton of video games. And so as we go through these definitions, try to internalize them and think how you would rank these from 8 to 1, 8 being the most important and the one that you're the best at, or the one that you embody the most right now. And try to rank those. And once you rank those, you'll really start to see yourself in a much different light there, because this doesn't mean that you're bad at it. We're just talking about relative comparisons here. So the next set are focus, push, and serve. I love these 3 because they're 3 very, very different concepts. If you're not focused on something, you're trying to do a lot of different things. And then Norman Jewison, who is a 50-year veteran of acting and directing in the film industry there, says, I think success has to do with focusing yourself to one thing at a time. Push is one that I think everybody attributes to success. It's being able to push yourself physically, mentally. You got to push, push, push. And that was said by David Gallo, who's a famous marine scientist. He's one of the leading folks at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. And one of the more unique ones that's on this list was said by Sherwin Newland. He's a professor of surgery at Yale. That millionaire serves others something of value. And so serve is kind of the value that you provide to other places. If you're a terrific singer and you're the lead singer in a band, I would argue that your serve would be ranked pretty high. If you're a poor singer and you're the singer in a band, maybe you should look at a different career there. And of course, there's a fun little acronym on here that I'm sure somebody has a tattoo in the area here on that says, push means persist until something happens. And I think even outside of this context, it's just a generally good rule to live by. The last 2 are ideas. If I were going to say one thing on here, is that the guy that said the ideas quote here and implores you to listen, observe, be curious, ask questions, problem solve, that was Bill Gates. And I feel like as an ideas guy, he's kind of the top of the food chain with that. And persist is the probably the most self-explanatory one here. This was said by Joe Kraus, who's the co-founder of Excite. Persistence is the #1 reason for our success. And of course, he also said my favorite quote in all of this there is that persistence helps us deal with crap, criticism, rejection, another word for jerks, and pressure. And that's really the culmination of all of these definitions here. And so for me, if I were going to go and when I go look in the mirror, and so I would consider this to be fairly accurate to where I am today, are my rankings here. And so I look at, and this doesn't have to be something that other people are going to agree with you on. This does not have to be something that you think your spouse or significant other, your children, or anybody at work would agree with. This is your definition. So for me, I think the best trait that I have is good. I know that the job that I have right now, I'm very, very good at it. And I try to take that air of confidence with everything that I do in my job. So when you speak to me about anything professionally that has to do with what I'm doing at work, I want you to know that I know what I'm doing. And so that requires me to live and breathe that sentiment of good. The second one for me is persistence. That's what I give it my 7 rank. And I've always dealt with adversity fairly well in my lifetime. But this is something that professionally, nothing is going to get in my way. I will, if there's no hole, if there's no doorway to walk through, I will make a hole in the wall. And I love that about myself. And I try to make sure and believe when I'm working on a problem that even if I'm stuck, I'm going to figure it out. For next one is ideas. A lot of where I am in my career today, I've trusted myself to come up with unique solutions and answers. And again, it's another one of those traits that I really appreciate about myself. But at the other end of the spectrum, focus is one that I rank very low. And I do that because I suck at focus. I want to own everything. I want to be the best at everything. And especially being at a company where the entirety of the company comprises experts, the best people in the world at electromagnetic effects is the area that we work in. There are certain sectors there that I don't have the time to study, and I'm not going to be able to be super good at the stuff that I'm doing in space and in lighting in those areas there if I'm worried about how transmitters work. That's just not what's going to be effective for me. And so, and when you're thinking about this, there's going to be areas of any line of business that you're working in that you're not going to be good at. I'm hugely guilty of trying to help out too much in other areas there. I'm a scientist, an engineer. I like to do business development. I don't need to be handling and commenting on finance generally. That's just not where I am. Now, for some of you, if you're in the middle of your career or you're just starting out, you need to take these and line them out like little steps for you to walk on along the career roadmap here. And make sure that if the role that you want to have requires you to have one of these traits, that you can work on it. And it's kind of nice there. But even if you understand yourself and you understand the role that you need to have, it's not always enough there. And so that brings us to kind of the second most important point, I think, with all of this stuff is how do you actually make it happen? I'd be remiss to say that anything that you get in life comes without politics. And so Tony Robbins was one of the folks for me that kind of made that really clear. And he says, success leaves clues. Go figure out what someone did who was successful, how they did it, model it, improve it, learn their steps, and they have the knowledge. And it seems really, really obvious that if somebody has been successful doing something, why wouldn't you copy them? But if you're trying to build a roadmap to get there, you obviously have to be able to walk your own path. And so let's assume that we've all been really great at our success traits and we embody them. We know what we're really good at and not good at. And you do all this stuff and you're still not where you want to be. Why is that? Well, because you don't probably have a good mentor for it there. And I was really fortunate early in my career when I was working at General Dynamics. I reached out to some folks in senior leadership there, and they were fantastic mentors to me, and they gave me a lot of really great career advice. And it really propelled me to understanding that one, there's certain things I need to be doing that I was never going to be aware of. I would have had no way to know any of the things that they've shared with me. And two, it gets them in your corner. If especially in an age where you don't get the face-to-face time, if you can cultivate relationships, which you can do through email, you can do through Zoom calling, through a simple text. It used to be through a handshake and a hello, but I think we're in a bit of a different spot from that. But you can take that capability to cultivate a relationship and really use it to propel your career. These folks, if they know your indomitable qualities, if they know that you're looking at this ladder from the bottom or from the middle and you can't even see the top for where you want to go in your career there, it's humbling, and it's also something that they've dealt with. And so I really love that idea of finding a mentor for it there. And I'll give you 2 brief pieces on that. Mentorship really needs to be a two-way street. You're not going to just get someone to help you out. Maybe you will, but you probably don't want that person. And you need to make sure that you pick a good mentor. I always implore people to make sure that you find a doer, someone that embodies the intersection of power and influence and what you want to do. The person that can command the room, but also has the credentials to actually command it, not necessarily the loudest person. And so that's a very important piece. If you pick a bad mentor, you may not end up where you want to go. You know, it's a bad taxi driver with bad directions in some cases there. And you also have to understand that in order to leverage your mentorship, it needs to suit where you are in your career. And so when we're looking at a career roadmap here, there's different phases. And as those phases change, maybe the mentor themselves and the mentee relationship change. You know, for me early on, I needed to understand, you know, in my first career roadmap where I'm sitting there, you know, 6 months into my first job out of college, looking at, you know, who am I right now? You know, what am I doing professionally? What am I going to be good at? I'm young. I don't know what I'm doing. And when I go and reviewed this, you know, when I did this the last time I did this there, you know, I'm looking at like I've started at a new company. You know, who do I want to be at this company? You know, I need to make sure that the role that I try to grow into is something that is really going to suit what I'm good at. Otherwise, I'm not going to excel. You know, why would I want to get into the deep end if I can't swim? So you need to learn how to swim, of course. So for a lot of us here, when you do your first iteration of the career roadmap, you really have to start on phase one here. And that's the, you know, who are you right now? Where are you right now? You have to get a survey. You have to put an X on the land, the map that you're on there to do it. And then obviously you grow through skills and experience and working with your mentor into phase two. And then the last of it, of course, is phase three. That's where you get to enjoy all the hard work that you've done. And for some of us, we are not far from phase three. Some of us are in the beginning of phase one, and some of us are somewhere in the middle. But regardless of where you are physically on there, you can start and begin a career roadmap in order to become career literate. And I'm purposely avoiding a direct definition for career literacy until the next slide. So bear with me if you're a little bit unclear on that, but I think it'll make sense when I get there. In order to get where you want to go, right? That is the goal of this entire discussion topic. I want to have a job that affords me the ability to consider myself successful. That's what we would call career literate. I know I said I was going to do it last slide, but I felt like I wanted to share it with you here. And so when you look at where you want to be, you have to know what you need to know to be there. If the role that I need to have is a CEO because I have overwhelming concerns of money or something like that, I need to know what it takes to be a CEO. And there's a lot of obstacles between a mid-level manager and the chief of finance or something like that. And so being aware of those obstacles helps you plan your path through it there. And then, of course, leveraging your mentor and becoming an expert are the two next necessary pieces to do that. So career literacy in its own world is this slide in general there, is understanding how to go from today to the eyeball at the side of the slide past step 4. So when you're doing that, you start very simply, where do I want to go? Do I want to get more money? Do I want to get myself into a role where I get to travel? Do I want to open my own business? Do I want to change roles within my own company? Do I want to leave my company? And so you can't do anything until you've answered that question. I mean, understanding who you are, what you're good at. You know, as much as I would love to be a famous artist or something like that, I just don't have it. And so I'm setting myself up for failure if I don't look at who I am in the mirror and do things like that. Now, the first step is, okay, I know who I am and I know where I want to go. You got to find a mentor and you have to learn what you need to know. The key with any of this is that the decision makers, these magic decision makers with my air quotes up, they need to trust you and they need to know you can unequivocally do a job before you do the job. And so how do you know what you need to do at the job before you get there? Well, it's easy. You talk to somebody that's done it before. And I can't stress it enough that having the right mentor will make the difference between whether or not you're good or bad at this type of process here. So now you have a friend, you have a friend who matters, or political capital, as some of us like to call it. You have the ability to, hey, so-and-so, you know, I'm really interested in becoming a manager, or I really want to get involved in finance, or I don't know, I mean, you can come up with any number of cases there. How would you go about doing that? How did you go about doing that? Inquire about it. And the mentor relationship is actually a pretty nice two-way street there, where if you have a good mentor, they'll actually care and know a lot about you. And when you're not in the room, they'll be able to vouch for you and They'll think of you in certain cases there if you maintain that dialogue. And so that lends yourself to moving towards step two. When you develop that relationship and you've learned, okay, I think I have someone I can rely on and that I trust, whose expertise has been provided to me, I can now gain my own expertise. And this is the one that I think a lot of people really don't understand, as to why didn't I get that promotion, or why was I passed over for an external candidate, or how am I supposed to get this role if I'm leaving my company and starting at a new company, or anything in between there. And the fact of the matter is that when you're in a business, you want to minimize risk. I want to make sure that whatever I'm doing, I do correctly. And so that being good at the job before you get it is an absolute necessity. And that of course requires working with your mentor and things like that. Obstacles is pretty self-explanatory. When I'm planning to become a manager, is there a person in the exact role that I want that's not gonna go anywhere? Are they gonna retire? Are they is the business gonna close? I mean, and any number of things can happen in there. If you're not aware of those, you can get caught off guard. But the nice thing with the obstacles is that gives you a jump off point, and makes the leap a very, very important decision to make. So I know what I need to know. I know who I need to know. I know what could happen on there. And once you've accomplished these three steps, you're ready to put yourself out there. The example I think I always use is if you're an engineer, or if you're a marketing major, or if you're an artist, any of these, it's generic enough that I think it's applicable there. At some point, you have to extend past the boundaries that you're within at this time and move on to the next piece. Go way beyond. Take a critical presentation at a big meeting and step up. Make yourself the person that is the most important one at the room for just a little while. And that's a free audition. And then ask your current manager, or spend some of this political capital or some of these friendship points with your mentor or a director or a leader on how you should make that jump. What I did when I was at General Dynamics, and this gave me a lot of confidence later in my career, is I asked, like, should I speak up at a meeting? Maybe not all meetings, but this is a good forum to do it because I've seen it successful. And so once you take that leap, you'll have shown that you can outwardly do a job there. And the one thing that we don't quantify on this list here, of course, is time. So there's no guarantee of any amount of time that you'll be able to do this in, but given enough effort, you will achieve your goals if you do so in an organized fashion like this. So as we start to wrap up here, I'm going to leave you guys with 3 key takeaways here. The first one, and I can't stress this any more than I already have, is to follow the formula. If you are not honest with yourself, you will not be successful with this, and you shouldn't bother doing it. Once you're ready to be honest with yourself, it's a pretty easy process. You look at who you are, you look at what you need to be doing, or you need to acquire, or you need to embody to be successful, and you look at what job would provide you that. And then you develop a plan to get there, a roadmap, and you make sure you have the right friends that can help teach you about it. A lot of us in college had a professor, or in high school had a teacher, or middle school, or elementary school, or trade school, or any of them there that was someone that you looked up to. And I would wager that they were probably pretty good mentors to you, whether you knew it or not. And that mentorship makes all the difference there. I think you can all recall back to a class that you may have taken where you had a teacher that was really awesome at it, and you just became interested and excited about that course because that teacher was so good at it there. And without realizing it, that teacher probably served a mentorship role. I had a great mentor growing up. I was in the Big Brother Big Sister program, and that was really awesome for me. And I looked up to my big brother every day growing up, and I loved all of that. And so some of us don't have the opportunity to go into the Big Brother Big Sister program, but perhaps your boss or a senior leader in your company, don't go email Bill Gates. He's probably not going to get back to you. You have to have some relevance to it there, of course. But it is a doable process, and one I think you should focus on. And then the last one is to have a good plan and understand that this plan is going to change. You do not do it one time and expect to just wake up and be successful. You do not do it every single day and expect to make progress and change it every day. It's something that requires a little bit of judgment, of course, as to how many times that you perform this, but it's always something that you should be working towards. And for a guy like me, I like having the endless challenge of chasing success. So with that, I'll pass things back over to Marcus and hopefully answer any questions you guys may have.
Justin, thank you again for an awesome workshop. Um, this really applies to me personally as a young professional trying to find your way in the world after college. And I definitely agree. You need a strong mentor and you need to have a plan in place. So we do have some questions that were prepared in advance. And the first question is, what are some tools and tips that anyone can use to land an interview at their dream job? And what advice do you have for acing that interview?
So thank you for that, Marcus. I think that's a really important question. So if you're at a point where you need to, or you make a decision, or you're just starting out, or really you're just evaluating job prospects and you identify that exact role that you think you need to have, how do you get it? Well, I guess my advice, I think I'd give you two pieces there. Is the first one is you have to be identifiable, and that really means understanding what your traits are for success and emphasizing them. You need to understand that it's a two-way interview, and so if you're just going to sit there and say yes, I can do that, I think that's half the question. What most interviewers look for from their interviewees are confidence. They look for your ability to command a room, things like that. It's important to do that part, but I think it's even more important to interview them and back and make sure that they're a good fit for you. Because remember, we're looking at where we want to be, and what something you read on paper might tell you in a job role or something like that. It might differ when you start to hear it in person there. And so that two-way dialogue there is pretty important. And as far as acing it, I've had a lot of success at making it sound and appear as if I'm beyond confident that I've already been able to do the job. And that's because I try to embody this process here as much as I can. So when I'm going in for an interview and I have information on what that role requires there, I make sure that I believe on day one I could step in and do that job. I'm not going to need a year or 6 months or something of training. And now that's to be said. You might need some of that too, but the goal in the interview is to convince them that you're the right person for it there. And I think that's how you do it best.
I totally agree with that. That is some great words of advice. And just want everyone to know that's on the workshop. Um, we receive these questions in advance. So at our next workshop, if you see a topic and you want questions to get in front of the presenter, please submit them to us. The next question that we have from participants is, what are the top things to consider when deciding to solidify your career path with a family?
So the family introduces an interesting wrinkle into things here. I'm going through it myself. As a family grows, or as you're considering to have one, maybe that family becomes marriage, or moving in with your parents, or moving your parents in with you, or having a child. It creates a little bit of baggage with these decisions there, because when you're single and you're running around doing whatever it is that you please, you really only have to worry about the near term as opposed to the long term. You can be more agile there. Whereas with a family, of course, all your decisions affect other people and those types of things. So when you're deciding to make that, your role needs to make sure that it encompasses what your obligations are outside of the office. Now, remember that we only are in the office for 40 something hours a week, hopefully less when it's nice out like this. But when you're in a position to take control of your career, you need to make sure that if your goal for being a great parent requires time, that you have a role that supports time. You can't be working 20 hours a day, 6 days a week, and expect to fulfill your needs outside of the office. So that flexibility is, I think, for those of us that have gone through that, or those of us that will, this will resonate with you, is you need to make sure that that role allows you to be the person you're supposed to be there. And I believe that strongly.
Yeah, Justin, and you mentioned that early in your presentation, how what your priorities changed. Once you had a kid, your priorities changed from money, career advancement to time. So I think we also keep that in consideration when you're chasing your career path. There's multiple factors of being a great human, and taking care of your family is one of those. The next question we have from our participants: besides technical and academic skills, what are the most important skills you need to master for career success?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think I have an answer for that one that's pretty concise, and then I'll elaborate on it. And it's communication. Um, I've tried to make sure that my entire life, I'm a pretty high energy guy as it is, so I'm not afraid to talk to people. I've really, I was the kid that would tap strangers at the supermarket and ask them, what they did for a living. And it was weird as a kid. I think it's still kind of weird as an adult, but I also think it portrays an important talent of mine is the ability to communicate. And if you lack that talent, you have a really, really steep slope to climb in your career. And as part of the self-reflection process there, if you don't identify communication as a strong suit of yours, then you really need to get to work on that there. I've worked with many of the most brilliant people in the aerospace and the military sectors in my career so far. And there's certain people that leave really, really indelible marks, and those are all the ones that can speak, because there's folks that have terrific ideas and terrific solutions, terrific businesses, terrific business plans, things like that. And if you're not able to articulate that information in a manner that other people respond to, that they can understand, they care about, it's difficult. We've all had those folks that present slides and they just read every word on the slide, and we wonder why we are in the room there doing that. And then you have the folks that can give engaging presentations and they make you excited about what it is that they're talking about, and that holds for digital relationships or in-person ones there. So for me, it's unequivocally communication. You've got to be a good communicator to be successful.
Yeah, that is so big. My background is in sales, and the ability to communicate with someone goes a long way. And even if you're not in sales, like Justin mentioned, if you're dealing with complex concepts, the ability to bring things down to a fifth grade level will help you tremendously in your career. Now I want to move over to questions that we gathered from the chat, and thank you, Kaylee, for doing that. The first question is, what if you don't want to be like anyone at your company? However, you like your role and career path. How would you map that out?
Oh, that's a nice question. So I've experienced that at my last job before I joined EMA. I really wasn't enthralled with any of the folks that were at the company. They were either at career stages I couldn't relate to, or I just didn't like how they went about their jobs. And so it's a lot more challenging when you don't have someone readily accessible for it. But I think the amazing part of this is that the underlying questions that you need to answer, that you need a mentor to answer for you, are how do I get to where I want to go? And so there's a number of us that are part of the DLE community here that have friends or inside of the community or outside of it that participate in stuff like that. But it doesn't require a day-to-day relationship to be a good mentor. You can call someone, you can look at someone outside of it there, but the only recommendation I have, and one I think determines whether this is a good idea or not, is, are they a doer? Have they done and demonstrated the things that you find to be important in terms of success? And if they can answer that, they're probably a pretty good candidate for a mentor.
I I totally agree, and that's one of the biggest challenges because you never know who's going to be your boss at a firm. But look at it on the flip side. If it's people that you don't want to emulate, you identify traits that you don't want to have once you reach that position. The next question that we have, and you mentioned this earlier, that you had a great mentor through the Boys and Big Brother Big Sister program. How would you, um, what tips would you give to someone that wants to become a mentor? How would they go about that?
Well, I think it's a point that I have a little bit of experience recently in, given that I'm in kind of a leadership position now within my company, and trying to be at least locally here somewhat. You have to find people that are clamoring to expend effort, and it's really easy to see those people. It's not that those that are not doing it, or that aren't and I'm not saying you have to stay late and come into work early every day. I think that's a bit of a different time than we're in now. But the ones that are genuinely interested in the why, not just checking boxes, they have a hunger for information, and not so to just solve the problem, but the processes that are involved in it there. And that's the creative process, that's the scientific process, it's whatever process that kind of relates to your career there. But finding those people, those are the ones that could really benefit most from mentorship, because if you're able to take that effort and that that motivation and point it in the right direction, they can do a lot of good with it.
I totally agree. And for everyone that's on this workshop, I encourage you to become a mentor, even if you're still trying to figure things out in your life and your career. Joining a Big Brothers Big Sister program can really help out a kid in need. The next question that we have is: we already know there's only 24 hours in a day. You have family, you have friends, you have so many things pulling your attention. How do you balance the demands of your current job versus building skills and expertise you need to get to your next job?
Well, that's a tough problem to have, and I think it's one that anybody that does this is going to face, right? You already have a full plate of responsibilities. You know, I'm telling you, Justin, you're telling me to take on more in order to get where I need to go. Well, that's so. I mean, there's incremental progress, and I think that's the key with it there. I don't think it's healthy or the correct or most efficient way to just take on a brand new skill from scratch that requires a PhD in order to be good at it. I don't think that's what we're after here. But if you're looking to grow in a particular area, and I'll use going from a contributor to a manager. You're a part of a team. A lot of us work in different team environments, and you have a person that's kind of the lead on the team, but they're not the manager, and you wonder why. What is it that makes them that way? So they have a good understanding, maybe not the best, but a good understanding of several facets of what makes the team work. And so by picking off one of those facets there, it's probably not too far out of the realm of what you're doing with, because you're on the team. And so that's probably a good way to do it. So you want to pick low-hanging fruit, thing that you can start to get under your belt. For some of us, that might be taking on generating slides for a presentation. Some of this, that might be talking to some customers differently, or reaching out to people and doing business development. To some of us, that might be looking at different departments and what they do. But you want to make sure that you're not taking too big of a step, because remember that if it's not for you there, you got to walk back, or find a way to walk back. So it is a tricky slope. I understand the nature of the question there, but if you pick a small incremental step, it's usually not too hard to fit that into your daily routine.
Got it. So taking it one step at a time, and try to master the little things, and then you'll be able to achieve your goal. I think that's great advice. The next question that I have, and I'll relate to this as well. I'm a millennial, and compared to baby boomers, millennials move jobs more frequently. How would you temper patience when you want to leave a firm just after 6 months?
So I think there's two sides to that, right? So you have the person who works at the company that doesn't want the employee to leave, and then you have the employee themselves. And so I think in order to answer that one, you have to start with the employee themselves as to why they would want to leave. And so I guess I'm technically a millennial there, but I guess I really haven't done much of the job hopping in my life. But I've seen many people that have. And so what that comes down to is, a demand for success quicker than I think you're used to. We're all used to now, nowadays with, I think you've probably seen on television the handing out trophies to everybody, and the arguments about participation trophies and things like that. And I'll save that actual conversation for a different time there. But what it boils into is, you take a person that is demanding success or a reward right now, and you put them in an environment where they're not getting what they want, and they see all the ads on LinkedIn and greener pastures and things like that. Maybe you can make a few more dollars here, and it becomes very appetizing to leave. And it hurts companies a lot. So when you look at it, why they would want to leave, that's why it is. And when you want to temper impatience, what you're asking them to do is to take a longer view with their success plan. And so I've had success at keeping people from doing that in my career by making sure that I've helped them lay out their career path. If you have an open-ended question and you don't know if you're going to get a promotion, or you don't know where that next role is, it feels like you're treading water a lot. And management and people that are in positions where they have to deal with folks like that have to be aware of that. So if you make it so that I have a clear, if I'm talking to myself and I'm a manager of somebody like me, what I need to do is understand, how do I get from point A to point B? What is point B? What's point G? What's point R? And that's part of just having a good plan for your employees and your staff that way.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that answer, Justin. We have one last question, and it goes back to like 2 to 3 slides before you end. where you rate yourself, your strengths and weaknesses. How would you, what is the process to go about doing that? For example, for me, when I played football, it was the hardest thing to tell myself that I wasn't good at something. I thought I was the greatest player ever. Do you leverage friends and family to help you fill out your strengths and weaknesses?
I think you can leverage friends and family, but I would put an asterisk with that because remember that we have inward and outward perceptions of ourselves. And what we're focused on here is inward. You want to know how you view yourself. And if you're correct in that, again, that you'll have a better chance of it there. But I think at the same time, it's important to see how you're perceived outwardly there. And maybe it'll give you some context to when you're viewing it there. I try to I think I'm a kind of a unique guy in that I try to wear my success traits, for lack of a better term, on my sleeve. So you see Justin, you know what you're getting with me, and there's not a lot of people like that. So for folks that are a little bit more reserved and a little bit less out there, it's okay to leverage friends and family there, but they can't tell you what your success traits are. They may enlighten you and just changing a 5 to a 4 or to a 3. But you should know your 1, your 6, 7, and 8 pretty heartily there, and don't be afraid of that either.
Justin, once again, thank you for your time, and thank you for everything. Thank you for everything that you shared with us, and Justin, and thank you for guiding us through with all this advice. I believe you have some homework for us all.
I do. So it wouldn't be a complete talk without giving homework or anything like that. It's the academist in me. So I've got you guys 3, really 4 pieces to take away from this. Is the first thing that you need to do is look at Richard St. John's TED Talks. You can find the time no matter how busy you are. There's only 7 minutes total of them. The first one's called Success is a Continuous Journey. It's about 4 minutes long. The second one is 8 Secrets of Success, and it's about 3 minutes long. It'll teach you a lot, and the 8 Secrets of Success is one of my favorite videos because he boils through a ton of information with very few words, and so even at the bare minimum, it's a good way to present a lot of information there. The second one is Identify a Mentor. Feel free to reach out to any of the folks in the community here or myself. I'm happy to help you through that process there. I'll be taking applications for mentees too, if there's anybody interested. I'm just kidding. And the last one is to make this a priority. If you do not live and breathe this process, it will not work for you. You have to be compromising in what you have to be to get what you want out of it, because understand that everybody's trying to be successful. And so if someone's working harder or more effectively than you are, you've got a bit of an uphill battle there. And so that's one of the requirements. So with that, I will pass the invisible microphone over to Linda for a few more words.
Super job, Justin. I think it was 3.5 months ago at least that you and I sat down and talked about the idea behind this workshop. And I just want to thank you for keeping it real, relevant, and actionable. I do hope everyone follows up on that homework assignment and stays accountable. Thanks for joining us, everyone that's out there. The Dooley Leadership Experience is committed to providing robust learning and networking like what you've just experienced. So please guide our future planning with your feedback. We're going to be sending you a quick poll after we sign off. Programs like this take a dedicated team to create. I'd like to extend tremendous gratitude to the team behind the scenes who've made it possible, and their DLE community members and volunteers: Kaylee Carmel, Chrissy Strum, John Semexon, Michelle Lopez, Evie Rodriguez, and Marcus Coleman. The DLE's mission is to advance rising leaders through premier professional development. And while our program dates to 2008, it's exciting to see that some of you are discovering us for the first time. Welcome. And please go to the DLE website. Just go to tle.dooley.com. And we have a complimentary membership form there for you to complete. And in doing so, you'll receive updates about our regular programming, our breakfast clubs, our culture chats, our monthly ownership workshops. Also, you'll receive our DLE workshop, DLE newsletter, The Hub, and also our Own It podcast. And we've got another one in the works. For those of you who are already DLE members, thank you for your support. Please recommend a friend or a colleague to join us. And finally, we are moving forward with another ownership workshop. The date is June 24th. The topic driven by your feedback, is Own Your Conversations. This is a workshop that will help you navigate difficult conversations with confidence and integrity. And you heard Justin say the importance, the criticality of effective communications as a skill for career success. Our guest speaker is Dr. Annie Shibata, and she's the professor of professional communication at Miami University. She's also shared her expertise on this subject in articles, television, radio interviews, and books around the world. So you can register right now. I believe we already have over 20 registrants, and we have a cutoff of 50, so don't waste your time. Go to dle.dooley.com/programs. This is a free workshop, and that's thanks to the sponsorship of Dooley and Company. And keep following us on DLE LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today, and have an uplifting week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all for attending this workshop. The presentation has ended.